Welcome to episode 2 of our Mothership campaign, where you may remember the party are en route to Prospero's dream for their first assignment. However, there is a diversion on the way. Bug, the pilot of the freighter, has told them he's making a drop-off en route to Yggdrasil. They don't know why. They searched last time for any cargo on the ship. There doesn't seem to be any, aside from their own luggage. The freighter has just made the jump into the Yggdrasil system, and all is going well until a short time later, the ship alarm sounds and the engines stop. Now, whatever is affecting the engines and other electrical systems on the ship also affected our audio recording for this episode, so I'm going to run you through what exactly happened. And we begin with Bug, the pilot, trying to restart the engines with no success. Todd is up in the cockpit with him. Todd also has pilot skills, so Bug asks him to stay in the cockpit while he goes back to check the engines. He leaves the channel open on the ship's communication system and basically says to Todd, when I say hit the button, you hit the button, and that should get us started again. Eric, who has some experience in electronics, goes to assist Bug, and Daff, concerned about the life support system, goes to the life support room in order to check the oxygen levels and everything else is okay there. As they do so, the ship's alarm sounds once more, this time with a collision warning.
Collision alert. Collision alert. Unidentified object directly ahead. Estimated impact in 16 minutes.
This gives the players an extra point of stress to add to the ones they received when the engines stopped. This being space, of course, with no propulsion, the ship continues in the line that it was going prior to the engine stopping, and now appears to be heading to an asteroid on which there is a navigation beacon. Unless the engines can be restarted, they are going to collide with the asteroid. Whilst checking over the life support systems, Daff notices something in the vent above his head. This is a grill covering the vent system that runs throughout the ship. It looks like oil, but it's not dripping down from the vent. It's come out and is going back up. Intrigued by this, he pulls over a table, stands on it, and looks up into the vent. There's something there. He gets a sense of movement. That something suddenly bursts out towards him, smashing its way through the vent, revealing itself as a strange barrel-shaped creature with a number of tentacles or pseudopods at its lower end. Tentacles which are lashing out towards him. Mac, on hearing this commotion and Daff's scream, rushes in to see this strange creature lunging at Daff. He doesn't want to pull his gun and fire because of all the machinery around, so he opts to take a swing at it with his combat knife. Daff, meanwhile, has successfully dodged the escape, but in doing so falls off the table with a crash to the deck. And of course, both players receive another stress point. They also have to make sand rolls. Daff fails his and remains frozen in terror on the floor. Mac succeeds and takes another swing at the creature, which at this point decides to shoot back up into the vent and disappear into the bowels of the ship. Bug, meanwhile, hearing that collision alert, is heading back to the cockpit, leaving Eric to see if he can sort out what's happened to the engines. It seems as though all the power has been drained, something akin to your car battery having been drained, and the engines won't even start. But Eric is on it. He thinks he's worked out how to fix it, and he has about 6 minutes left before collision, so no pressure. Daff and Mac, meantime, have checked the life support systems. Everything's okay there. They're moving back into the cargo hold. Sure enough, the shout comes through to the cockpit from Eric. He thinks he's fixed the problem. Bug presses the button, and the reassuring hum of the engines returns. Todd takes the controls and steers the ship out of the path of the oncoming asteroid. With the ship back to normal then, Eric fires up his E-pad and begins running his diagnostic. He's crouched over it, but a reflection in the screen catches his eye, a movement from above. Black oily tendrils coming out of the vent above his head. There's a heavy bang against the grill and it begins to buckle. Eric steps back and picks up the nearest thing he can see that might be a weapon, a fire extinguisher. As the creature bursts out of the vent, Eric desperately tries to get the fire extinguisher working, but he fails his roll quite badly. He's got the thing upside down. He can't quite find the nozzle. The creature lashes out. A pseudopod whips across the room, tears a rent in the sleeve of Eric's tweed jacket, and opens a large gash in his arm. Eric takes a stress point and then fails his SAN roll. He stands there frozen. The fire extinguisher drops from nerveless fingers. Even the pipe drops out of his mouth with a clatter to the floor. The creature advances. Luckily, Aris, just outside, has heard the commotion and bursts into the room shouting. This is enough to make the creature pause. It elongates itself, stretches up, and pulls itself back up into the vent to disappear. Aris goes over to a very shaken Eric and leads him out of the engine room. Now, Aris has a background in xenobiology, so he makes a roll to see if he can identify this creature, but it's nothing he's ever seen before. Bug, meanwhile, hearing all this going on over the comm system, engages the autopilot and slides down the ladder into the cargo bay, where he utters the words that no space traveler wants to hear. Shit, I think it's got out. He starts undoing some panel bolts on the end wall of the cargo bay. Daff, who is still holding the vent grill, lets it go. He examines it before he does, just to see if there's any residue on it. There isn't, but it does feel very cold. In fact, everyone who is in proximity to the creature feels a little colder. Bug removes a large panel from the wall, revealing a hidden compartment at the end of the cargo bay. Inside that, there's a metal crate with a broken lid. Above it, there's a vent opening, and the vent grill is on the floor next to the crate. So, those characters closest to Bug start asking him what this is, what was in the crate, what is it. He seems very reluctant to talk about it. All he really says is, this is the cargo I'm supposed to deliver. He won't say who it's for, or where it's from, or what it is. In fact, it's more than likely that he doesn't really know what it is. He's just paid to deliver it. Todd, meanwhile, wanders back up to the cockpit just to keep an eye on things. Eric pulls up a plan of the ship on his e-pad and starts looking at the vent system. And him and Aris devise this plan that they relay to the others to see if they can block up the vents. Basically, are there some ship's panels they could use or other things? Todd very helpfully offers that he has a cushion on his pilot seat. So basically the plan evolves into blocking up all the vents except for one, and they'll try and flush the creature out through that one and be ready for it. The other thing that they decide is not to leave any of the characters on their own. So, over to Todd, who hears a disconcerting thud on the grill above his head. He immediately whips off his jacket, stands on the chair, and presses his jacket against the grill. But the creature that is pushing back is stronger than him. Todd, realizing that he's not going to win this battle, decides to make a very acrobatic maneuver. He's going to dive off the chair, go into a combat roll through the door, stand up, and hit the door close button. Really nice idea. Unfortunately, the roll means he doesn't quite make it. He dives off the chair fine, but then smashes into the wall next to the door, which leaves him a little dazed and stunned. Behind him, he hears a horrible sound, the squelchy thud of the creature landing on the deck. Todd wheels around to look at the creature, just in time to see two pseudopods lashing out towards him. He dodges one, but the other catches him across the chest, ripping apart his t-shirt and opening a deep cut. Todd staggers back. To add insult to injury, he takes a stress point and fails his SAN roll. Fortunately, his reaction is to scrabble away in fear. This has kicked in his flight mechanism, and he backs sharply off into the crew area where he attempts to hide. Daff, meanwhile, is looking around the cargo bay for some sort of welding equipment, which he finds next to Clang. He and Mac decide to start working on the vents in the storeroom and in life support. Eric, meanwhile, is putting one of the panels he's taken off of the engine to good use. He's fixing that to the vent in the engine room to block that. Everyone hears Todd's screams over the intercom, but they're very busy with their task. And in fact, I think Eric actually says, "Oh, I'm sure Todd will be fine." Having finished in the engine room, Aris and Eric are going to move across to the other engine room to block the vent there. As they are moving across the airlock, all of the lights go out. Everything is pitch black. Daff and Mac call to each other. They've both pretty much finished off blocking their vents, and Daff asks if they can see Bug. They come out of their rooms into the cargo bay to see if there's any sign of Bug. He's at the other end of the cargo bay, of course, in that little secret compartment. It's pitch black. They can't see him, but they can hear him screaming. Mac runs across the cargo bay. In the pitch black, he has to make a roll. Luckily, he avoids tripping over anything or banging into anything, and he gets all the way across to Bug and pulls him out of the secret compartment. As far as he can tell, Bug's face seems to be covered in blood. So he drags him across back towards Daff, who comes out and, by the light of his E-pad, has a quick examination. Bug has suffered severe lacerations to the scalp, and one of his ears is hanging half off. Daff calls for a first aid kit, and Mac says, "Okay, I'll go and look for one." He also calls Eric over the comms to fix the lights. Now, in order to do that, Eric has to move down into life support where the controls are. Aris breaks out a chem light, which makes a very nice ambience, then calls Todd to meet in the storeroom, and from there they're all going to go down to the cargo bay and life support. Mac, meanwhile, is looking for a first aid kit. He has trouble finding one in the cargo bay. It's a huge, dark space, but he is reminded that there's definitely a first aid kit in the crew area. All he has to do is climb up the ladder on his own into the crew area, and he could probably easily find it. Mac doesn't seem too keen on that, but he does call Todd, and Todd agrees to go with him to search for the first aid kit. Daff, meanwhile, is calming Bug down. He's going into shock. Eric is now working the controls, and within a couple of minutes he's got the lights back on, just as Todd and Mac find the medkit upstairs, and they bring that back down to the cargo bay. So Daff is now able to clean Bug up and get his wounds stitched with some superglue. Todd also gets his chest wound attended to by Daff, and now begins the process of blocking up all the air vents, and the characters also decide to start arming themselves. So they're looking around, picking up various tools they find in the cargo bay and other places, crowbars, wrenches, and so on. It's at that point that the alarm sounds again, this time with a warning that the oxygen levels are falling. Another stress point. Eric rushes back to the life support room with Aris watching over him, and he starts working on the system again. This time, because of what's happened before, he picks up the problem very quickly, so within a couple of minutes, oxygen levels are normalized. Todd and Mac are going up into the cockpit to block the vent there, then they're going to move into the crew area to attend to that one, and Aris and Eric move into the cargo bay to start blocking the vents in that room. Basically, the only one that's going to be left open is the one in the secret cargo department that leads back into the metal crate. During all this, Daff is chatting to Bug. He's trying to find out more information about the cargo, but as we've said before, all Bug knows is he has a crate that he has to deliver somewhere, and he doesn't know what was in it. It's certainly not the done thing to open a crate and have a look if you're doing this kind of delivery. And besides, he also adds, sometimes it's best not to ask too many questions. Daff asks Bug to get Clang, the freight robot, in operation in case they need him to move the crate, and then he's going back up to the crew area to get his pistol from his personal effects. Each of the group was given a pistol as part of their loadout. Now, these are ones that are safe-ish to fire on spaceships or space stations. They're low-powered pistols that fire a heavy plastic slug. So they will certainly stop someone and put them down, but they're not going to pass through someone and make a hole in the wall, which is not a good idea in space, of course. So everything seems to have quietened down and gone back to normal, but of course we can't let that situation go on for long. Bug starts shouting again. There's something wrong with Clang. Aris and Eric look over to see the large robot advancing on its tracks towards Bug, with both its arms lifted menacingly above its head. Bug, who's still a bit in shock from his earlier injuries, turns and trips over the welding equipment strewn across the cargo bay floor. Aris runs towards him with the aim of grabbing him and pulling him out of the way of the oncoming robot, but he fails his roll with the 95. He stumbles over as well. He does, however, manage to grab hold of Bug's wrists. The robot trundles forward. Eric joins in as well. He successfully sprints across the cargo bay and leaps onto Clang's back, looking for the emergency stop button. However, he finds it difficult to gain a handhold and slips back down to the floor. Clang is now looming over the prone Bug. He smashes down with one of his heavy arms straight onto Bug's shin. There's a horrible snap, and Bug screams again. Aris manages to get to his feet and is trying now to pull Bug away as Clang raises his arms for another attack. Unfortunately, he rolls a 99. He gives a desperate heave and his back spasms. He seizes up. He reels away in agony, doubled over. Eric, now close to Clang, can see the emergency button. This time he manages to leap up and hit it square on. Clang comes to a slow halt. The arms drop down to the sides and all the lights on his dashboard stop flashing. All that's left is the small standby light. While Aris is still doubled over in pain, Eric rushes to Bug. He takes a look at his leg, not a pretty sight. The shin bone has broken through the skin. Bug is in agony. He's not having a good flight, is he? Meanwhile, upstairs, Mac and Todd are moving towards the port engine room with the intention of blocking that vent, and Daff, hearing that his medical services are required once again, moves to the lift in the storeroom. As he does so, there's a noise from the thin panel welded over the vent opening in the storeroom. Bang, 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 and the panel is starting to buckle. Daff, forgetting that he's carrying a pistol, it seems, backs out of the storeroom and takes refuge in the engine room. Mac and Todd come forward and appear around the door with the airlock, ready to pounce should the creature reappear. However, the banging stops and silence reigns once more. So we fast forward a little. Bug has been taken up to the bunk room and Daff has treated his leg there. He's also sedated him, so Bug is out of it for the moment, laying on the bunk. And the rest start to talk about their plan. When Eric takes a look at this mysterious crate, he determines that it's actually a Faraday cage, obviously built to dampen down this creature's abilities or the effect it's having on all the local electrical systems. So a plan is then formulated to put a power source into the crate in the hope of luring it back, and they decide to use Clang's battery pack. So that is removed and put into the crate, and everyone now waits. They don't have to wait for too long because what with Bug being unconscious, Daff is effectively on his own in the bunk room, and he starts to hear that familiar bang, bang, bang again from the panel covering the vent, which starts to buckle. Daff backs out of the room quickly. Mac and Todd rush through. As they're kind of pushing past him, Daff remembers that he has a pistol. The creature bursts through the panel, drops to the floor, and Daff opens fire. There's a dull thwack as the slugs hit the creature. They just sort of sink into it, and the creature's body closes over the slugs. It doesn't seem to have done any damage. However, the creature does once again elongate and shoot itself back up into the vent. Everyone shouts to Eric and Aris below, "It's coming! It's on its way!" Sure enough, they hear the thing rattling through the vents, and it pops out above the crate and drops into it. Aris rushes forward with the lid, Eric rushes forward with the welding equipment, and they start to fix the lid back in place. As they are doing so, everyone is hit by a peculiar vision. They find themselves on the surface of an alien planet under an orange sky. Around them, there's nothing but a desolate wasteland of rocks and sand. But immediately by them are small creatures, smaller versions of the one in the vent, waving their tentacles. Everyone gets an immense feeling of both hunger and sadness. Then suddenly the vision fades and they find themselves back on the bug. Everyone makes a sand roll, and they have a day or so now for some somber reflection as a bug, once he's awake and back in charge, directs the freighter to Yggdrasil 8 and puts it in orbit above a small moon there. He tells them this is a drop-off point for the cargo and a shuttle is going to be coming up to transfer the crate onto. He insists that all of the group stay out of the way. He doesn't want them seeing this. He doesn't want them to be seen. Again, when they ask why, he says, there are some things it's best not to know. However, this being a covert ops group, of course, as the shuttle comes up, they do try and sort of hide themselves around the ship in various places to get a peek at what is going on. And Daff, who's in the cockpit, gets a good view of the shuttle as it comes up to dock. There are no markings or writing on it, other than what looks like some sort of corporate logo, a yellow lizard. Daff makes a note of this for future reference. Once the shuttle was docked, the others, from their various vantage points, see 4 people come on board. Bug welcomes them and takes them to the cargo bay. 3 of them are dressed in conventional flight suits. 1 has a white coat and is carrying an e-pad, which he consults. The crate is removed from the secret compartment and placed aboard the shuttle, which then returns back to the moon. Bug, with something of a sigh of relief, makes his way to the cockpit and says, okay, let's get to Prospero's dream. From there, it's a couple of days back to the jump gate, then a jump through to the Magrini system, and finally, a couple of days later, a large blue planet appears ahead. It seems to be largely a water planet, and suspended before it, twinkling in the heavens, is the largest space station that any of the party have ever seen. And from it comes a transmission directly to the bug.
Prospero's dream to the bug. Prospero's dream to the bug. Please switch to thrusters and follow the nav signal to Dock C Bay 57. Be ready to transmit your cargo manifest at the tone. Welcome to the dream.